September 22nd, 2020. This is a special work session of the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners. We have a few things on our agenda today, things we would like to take care of before the end of the year. So I'm Patty Clapper. I am sitting in the meeting room at the county building, and we have tuning in from home, Steve Child, Chairman of the Board, George Newman, Kelly McNicholas, Vice Chairman, and Greg Poshman. We also have staff, variety of staff zooming into the meeting, and we have technical assistants here in the meeting room. So I am, with great pleasure, going to turn this meeting over to Chairman Steve Child.
Okay, thank you, Patty. So this, I will call a special meeting to order. This is normally a work session day, but we are doing official business today. So we do have public comment period here. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to make a comment? You may phone in on the, let's see, phone at the top of our agenda for today if you wish to make a comment. Not seeing any attendees on here at the moment. We'll give them a part of a minute to phone in. Okay, not seeing anybody call in, so I'm going to close the public comment period. And we'll move to our consent items. The first item, and these are single reading items. First one is certification of mill levies for all Pickens County taxing districts. 2020 property taxes collected in 2021. So, Ann Driggers, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman Childs. This is Ann Driggers. I'm here today in my capacity as Treasurer of Pickens County, and I would also like to introduce to you the Chief Deputy Treasurer, Najou Belmont, who has worked diligently on preparing this item for you. As you know, I have a few other titles as well, and so it's very important that I have a chief deputy since they do the majority of the work. Najou is fairly new to the position this year. She was recently promoted as Sid Toffney, who had been in the position for quite a few years, took a step down so she could spend some more time preparing for retirement. So we convinced her not to do it quite yet. So this is Najou's first time, I believe, presenting to you all, and I want to thank her for all her hard work in taking on this new position, and more specifically on this item today. So we're here to present to you the certification of mill levies for all Pickens County taxing districts for the 2020 property tax, which is collected in 2021. This is a certification that is required by state statute. It's required that the county commissioners in every county in Colorado annually certify the mill levies for all the taxing districts within their jurisdiction by December 22nd. And we thank you for having this meeting today, which is the last day it could be done, but gave us enough time to collect all the information from the districts. They were all required to have their mill levies certified by their boards on December 15th, which was the same day that you did Pickens County's own. And then those mill levies are provided to Najou, and then she collates them all in the spreadsheet that I emailed to you this morning, and I want to make sure that you all have that. The main page of that spreadsheet is the summary one, and you can see there that over $142 million in property tax total for all the districts, municipalities, and Pitkin County itself is going to be levied based upon the information that's provided to the assessor, and that then in turn provided to the state. And that's what this certification is about. So it has no impact on the Pitkin County budget or anything like that. This is purely a state statute requirement that you perform this certification.
Okay, any questions for Ann? Is there any way we could put that up on the screen so the public can see it, Ann?
Yeah, I can share mine. It's terribly small, but I'll do my best. So I'm showing here the summary sheet, and the bottom far right is the total revenues that this represents for our districts and municipalities. Actually, I misspoke, 145.5 million. So the schools is actually one of the largest beneficiaries of this. The subtotal for the schools is $51 million. Local government is $94 million, but that's spread between all the other districts.
Okay, Ann, and on that sheet where it says local government counties, 26 million, is that what Pitkin County is collecting for ourselves?
Correct.
For
so
our
that's
general
Pitkin
fund?
County, yeah, general fund, road and bridge, human services. We also have, in your certifications, the ambulance district, Twining Flats and Redstone Ranch Acres, as well as the library. And they're all districts, but they will be included lower down in this number. So it's not the total amount that Pitkin County will collect, because we will also have our districts that I just mentioned.
Okay, and then Ann, just for the public's benefit, we collect, or you collect, all of these property taxes and then disperse them to the schools and the college and the various districts. Is that right?
That is correct. NASHU oversees that collection. But NASHU, could you perhaps explain a little bit about the timing of when you mail out the property tax notices and bills and the collection dates?
Yeah, so every month we do a distribution to all the districts. By statute, they have to be mailed by the 10th of the month. For the school districts, we have a mid-month distribution for the 3 biggest months that coincide with the deadlines, which are February, April, and May.
Okay, commissioners, are there any questions on the mill levy certifications? Kelly?
Thanks. Hi, Najito. Hi, Ann. Nice to see you. I'm wondering, do these reflect the mill levies that were passed on the ballot, or do those go into effect next year?
The November ballots, are you talking about new mill levies? I'm not sure which districts have done that, but it relies upon them providing that information to NAJU. Do you have any idea, NAJU, if there are any new mill levies?
No, it's pretty much the same of last year. There are some, the basalt and the snowmass fire protection have a new Gallagher adjustment, but that's the only different items.
Thank you.
This is not a public hearing, is it, Ann? I don't believe it is.
No.
Okay. So, I'm okay with, approving this certification. Do any commissioners have any concerns or questions?
Steve, I have a question.
If not, we need a motion. Patty?
Yeah, I have a question, because I've forgotten the number, but how many special districts do we have in this county? Because I know it's significant. Estimate, rough guess.
I think there's like 50-something.
Yeah, so that just shows how much work you have to go through to get all this done. It's not like it's a simple process. It can be rather complex because they all have a different level, they all have different terms, they all have, it's not as easy as some might think that it is. So the work and the effort that you put in, both departments, is greatly appreciated.
Thank you. It is very complicated. I'm showing on the screen right now. You can see the different mill levies for each of these particular districts, and the terms, and there's just so much information to collect, and this then has to be input into the state system before it gets certified by the state too.
And Steve, one other thing, since we have John Ely on this meeting, maybe we can just ask him now if it's allowed for me to sign on behalf of Steve Child. Looks like it's pretty specific as to the chairman signing, but since I'm in the room and Steve is not, am I allowed to sign on his behalf, or should we do it electronically by Steve and then have Steve sign a hard copy when he comes into the office?
I don't believe we need a hard copy signed. However, to the extent that that's necessary, the language in the resolution can be changed to authorize the chair or his designee to execute, just on a verbal amendment by the board right now.
Okay, I just want to try and make it easier than for Steve to have to come into the office today. So whatever works, I'm here, and I'm willing to sign if that works for staff.
Yeah, and I did try to come to town today. Highway 82 is backed up. I don't know for how many miles. I turned around and came home because I would have not even gotten to our meeting by now if I had kept trying to go to Aspen. So I don't know when that's going to get cleared up on the highway, but
We didn't get a notice.
so it'd be terrific if Patty could sign for me, and if we have to amend the resolution, then let's do that. Kelly?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't see a resolution. So where did I miss that? Was it attached to the AIS or?
No, there is no resolution. The
Okay.
state statute requires that it is signed on this particular form, and this form is what is submitted.
Okay.
And you just certify it by vote, and then it's signed.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a second question. Ann and Najee, there's an effort at CCI to amend the statute that would allow you to sign it administratively rather than have to come before the BOCC. And since you're here, I figured I'd ask you, you know, if you would support that change, and if you see any problems with that change, or if you see, you know, a benefit to the public that we would lose if this went before you rather than come before us publicly.
I guess as treasurer, I would be happy to sign, but I think that's really more of a legal or a board preference.
Greg?
Yes, Steve, if you're ready for it, I'd like to make a motion that we certify the mill levies for Pitkin County taxing districts in 2020, property taxes collected in 2021.
Okay, moved by Greg. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Kelly seconded the motion. Any further discussion?
Thank you.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Aye.
Just wanted to say thanks to
Thank
Ann
you,
and
everybody.
Najee.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
So, let's see. One thing we have to do, and I forgot to mention it at the beginning, is Jeanette Jones is on for doing a thing about liquor licenses. I was thinking we could put that in as number 3 after the library board appointment, because I think it would be a consent item, single reading. So Jeanette, what would the title of that be?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I'm kind of fading in and out
Yes.
with here. Okay.
Yes, we can, Jeanette.
Steve, today is just for discussion purposes and direction. So John Peacock and I talked about just adding it to open discussion and getting your direction, and then I will bring a resolution back if you approve the concept of the discussion on January 13th.
Yeah, sorry, Steve. We thought we had added to the COVID update. It's really a COVID-related item.
Okay. Okay, let's do that then. So it'll just be open discussion item. Thanks, Jeanette.
Sure.
So going to the item number 2 is the resolution ratifying the appointment of Colleen Irwin. Do I have that right, George? Is it Irwin
Urban
or
with a
Irvin?
B.
To the Basalt Regional Library Board of Trustees.
Yeah, Irving.
And Charlotte Anderson here.
Hello, everybody. Yes, whenever there's a change in the trustees in the Basalt Library Board, ratification is needed by our board. She is a Pitkin County representative, and she is taking Victoria Treese's place, who resigned her position. So Steve and George, you were in that interview, so if there's anything you'd like to add, please do so.
So, yeah, George and I met. There were 2 people applied for the board appointment, and they both were very well qualified to serve on the library board. And we decided to pick Colleen because she is younger and she has school-aged children. And that is a demographic that's not on the board at all. It tends to be more older people who are retired. serving on the board. So we thought it was important to get a younger, a younger person with a family who used the library represented on the board. And that was really the deciding factor because both the candidates were very well qualified to serve on the library board. Greg?
Just wanted to say that I think I first met Colleen around, might have been 1990. She's been in the Valley quite a while, and I think it's great. It's great to see her joining the library board. It's a wonderful thing. So I'm fully supportive, and I think she's going to be great.
Okay, thank you, Greg. So we would need a motion to approve the resolution appointing Colleen to the board.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by George, seconded by Greg. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Hi, thanks for doing that.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Charlotte, I wanted to compliment Charlotte. From this view here on your Zoom, it looks as if you've got the cutest antlers from your chandelier.
Yeah.
So good, well
Yeah,
done on
no,
the
I have
holiday
to-
decorations.
Thank you. And I wish you all a happy holiday.
You too,
You
Charlotte.
too,
Thank
Charlotte.
you.
Yeah, I just realized we don't have our holiday party this year as in regular years where we all get together and wish everyone a happy holidays. So we'll have to make do as best we can. Third item, we have an emergency ordinance. This is a confirmatory reading on a public hearing. This is amending ordinance 0219 regarding the purchase of the Sunfire Ranch conservation easement. And let's see who all is on the screen. We don't have Dale or Rye on in the meeting. John Ely, could you discuss it?
Right here.
Sure, Steve. I think that Dale and Rye are both trying to close this particular transaction right now, or at least they're trying to work toward it today, which is probably why neither one are present right at this particular time. So this is a confirmatory reading of an action that the board has taken previously. I believe the action date was December 2nd, 2020. And the action of the board was taken as an emergency ordinance at that time because the concern was that we were going to be in a situation of trying to close the transaction back then. In fact, perhaps that day of December 2nd or the end of that particular week. The transaction didn't close, so hopefully we'll have it done today. The confirmatory reading is to finalize the board's action on the emergency ordinance that changed the purchase resolution for the Sunfire Ranch conservation easement. It increased the purchase amount from $8.9 million to an $8.9 million to an even $9 million, and it increased the transaction cost from $10,000 to $20,000. Those two changes were adopted and effective at the initial vote of the board back on December 2nd. And so pursuant to the Home Rule Charter, this is a public hearing and a confirmatory reading of the previous action.
Okay, any questions from the board? Okay, this is a public hearing. Does anyone from the public who is viewing wish to make a comment about this emergency ordinance regarding the purchase of the Sunfire Ranch conservation easement? And right now there are no extra participants besides commissioners and staff people. We'll give a part of a minute to see if anyone phones in on this item. Okay, not seeing anybody phoning in, so I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. For further questions for a motion,
Steve, I'd move to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by George, seconded by Greg to approve.
I have a
Is
comment.
there any further comment? Patty?
Yeah, again, I want to thank Jason Sewell and his team for working for so long and diligently, and also working so well with Pickens County to get this conservation easement finally done, and I'm excited to see it moving forward. So, to Jason, my most heartfelt thanks.
Absolutely, and I'd also like to thank Aspen Valley Land Trust. For various reasons, they ended up putting their money into the purchase of the Thompson Divide Ranch, which we finalized earlier in the summer, instead of putting it into this. And that was the reason why then we had to adjust the where the money was coming from for the purchase of this conservation easement. But Aspen Valley Land Trust efforts are really appreciated in all of the different things they work on. So, seeing no further discussion, all in favor of approval, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to open discussion. John?
Thanks, Steve. The main item that we have is a update for the board on COVID. So we do know those take a little bit of time. I don't know if you want to see if the board has any other items before I launch in, or go ahead and get started.
I just wanted to make an announcement. This is my last meeting on my satellite internet, because yesterday Pathfinder was successful in hooking our house up to the county broadband system.
Oh, good.
Which they've been struggling with that, but they were successful yesterday. So next time I'm on a meeting, I'll be going off by way of our wireless broadband. So should we have Jeanette do her part first, John, on the COVID?
I've got it integrated, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here.
Okay, go ahead, John.
So obviously, it's been a busy week with an emergency Board of Health meeting yesterday, changes to the public health order coming down today. So we have quite a bit to update the board on. We are going to start with Jeanette. The state has made changes to liquor license fees. We'll want to see if the board wants to match that. Then we'll talk about the metrics and why we had concerns that led to the Board of Health meeting yesterday, changes that were directed in the public health order for really through January 4th, when we'll reconvene the Board of Health again. There's a federal aid package. Would like to share a little bit about what we know about that. Want to talk to the board. We are going to propose closing the admin building through January 4th. Talk about next steps and questions and discussion. And Jeanette, I did not do a slide for you, so if I could pivot to you to maybe explain what's happening with the liquor license fees.
Okay. Morning, everyone, again. Due to Senate Bill 20B-001, and I think I'm sure I forwarded that to all of you this morning, the state is temporarily, and by explaining that for the year, December 7th, 2020 through December 7th, 2021. They are waiving certain liquor license fees, particularly for applications and renewals. This doesn't include retail liquor stores. I think they've done pretty well, so that's not on the list. There are some late fees for expiration of licenses. Hopefully we don't have any of those. We had one last year and it was a $500 penalty for them, but hopefully we'll alleviate any of those. So my question to the board is, do you want to detail, if you will, on the state Colorado Department of Revenue Liquor Enforcement Division and waive certain liquor license fees for our establishments to maybe possibly help them through this time? And if we are fortunate enough to get out of this pandemic, maybe help them financially to recover somewhat. So if the board is willing to do this or feels like it's something that you want to look at, I can bring a resolution back to you in January for you to discuss further.
Kelly?
Yeah, I support this. How much are we, foregone revenue are we talking?
Kelly, I crunched the numbers this morning and it looks like I put 6,000 in my email, but I padded it a little high in case we have a couple of new transfers, or not transfers, new liquor licenses other than transfers. It comes to about $4,200 a year.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm fine with this. Thank you.
Okay, any other thoughts from the board? I'd be in favor of you bringing that back. It makes sense to me, Jeanette.
I have a question.
Greg, you, Patty?
Yeah, I support this, but is there any thought or way if we waive a liquor license fee and whoever was holding that liquor license is in violation of public health orders, that we can require them to pay back that fee? Assuming that their liquor license isn't pulled. I'd hate to be, giving people credit by allowing them to not have to pay their liquor license fee, and then have them turn around and violate the public health orders involving their liquor license. That's kind of rewarding them for doing the wrong thing. Just a thought.
Is still with us, John Ely?
No, we can't do that. The fee is designed to defray costs of administration, and the state recognizes at times for certain fees a cap, so that, a particular business or industry can move ahead without an overburdensome fee. And so now the ability to increase is afforded local jurisdictions, counties. We cannot convert that into a penalty assessment, or we cannot change a fee as a means of enforcement or imposition of a penalty on a particular business or license holder.
So there's no way we could make waiving the fee contingent upon them staying in good stead with the public health order?
It's the fee action is something that's done across the board for a broad class of people, so it's not done individually and it cannot be revoked on an individual basis. So the fee is something that's simply established for this particular process of administration of licenses.
Okay, just thought I'd give it a try.
Okay.
So I would support then having Jeanette come back to us with a resolution. Is that what we need? Or allowing us to, and then do we have a time frame? We want to waive those fees for the whole year of 2021 and then reconsider for 2022?
I see nods.
Yep.
Okay.
Jeanette says yes.
Thank you, Jeanette.
So we have a majority of the board have weighed in approval of be bringing a resolution to us in January, so I guess that would be on,
The
I'm
13th.
not sure, on the 13th. Okay,
Okay, see you then.
all right,
Happy-
thanks, Jeanette.
Holidays, everybody.
Thanks, Jeanette.
Okay, John?
All right, thanks, Steve. So, our state dial, the big concern is the incidence rate number. Over the last couple of weeks, this has more than doubled. In Pickens County, our test positivity and hospitalization data has stayed pretty stable, but we're really within the this appears to be pretty consistent along the Roaring Fork Valley as our incidence rate is approaching Garfield counties. Just to give you an idea of the exponential increase, this is a graph of our overall incidence rate since March, and you can see really what's been happening here. We were hoping this was going to be a leveling off and a coming down last week, but really what we're seeing is exponential growth. We are seeing our test positivity rate creep back up a little bit, but with all of these positive cases, it has stayed roughly in that yellow zone because of all the testing that's been brought on. And I apologize, I didn't get the dates changed down here. You can tell I'm reusing some templates, but this is the most recent data. You saw this last week, but it's just worth reminding the board. The Board of Health yesterday was looking at the incidence rate data, what's happening with the state dial data, and then also state epi data that was recently released that shows what's happening with counties that did go into red level restrictions, what's happened with their incidence rates, which they have consistently gone down, as you can see. Those that stayed in orange with a couple of exceptions have either plateaued or gone up, and of course Pickens County, as we just saw, has certainly been increasing. The concern, of course, is that as incidence rates goes up, our likelihood of that second metric tripping into a red level, whether that be hospitalizations or positivity rate, increases. And that's what we're certainly trying to prevent. So there was a Board of Health meeting yesterday, and sorry, this slide is super busy. I probably should have broken this up, but there were a number of changes that were made to strengthen Pickens County's current public health order, with most areas aligning to red level restrictions with some exceptions. Some of the bigger changes, personal gathering size are reduced to 0. So that means personal gatherings only with those in your own household. That's, I know, particularly challenging as we go into the holiday season, but particularly important given the rate of infection that we're seeing. Restaurants will be permitted to continue to operate at 25% occupancy, but the 9:30 p.m. last call and 10 p.m. closure was kept in place. There's the additional restriction of table seatings by the same household, by those of the same household. That is going to be challenging to enforce, and it's going to be challenging for the restaurant community, but the better compliance, the less mixing we have of multiple households while our incidence rates are this high, the more likely we are to get hold of this infection. Group camps, virtual or outdoors with no more than 10. Critical and non-critical retail is at the red level restrictions. That's at 50% capacity with curbside pickup encouraged. Personal services, they're at 25% capacity, up to 25 people with space calculator. Office and gym capacity has dropped. Office capacity is brought down to 10%, gyms to 10%, with 10 people per room and reservations required. Events are impacted. The new public health order will not allow indoor events, and we will not be accepting any event safety plans for indoor events. There was an exception that events with a safety plan approved as of yesterday. I'm sorry, I'm a day off here. So as of 12/20/20, those will be permitted to continue. There were about 10 events that fell into that category that staff felt were okay to let go forward. Outdoor events are still permitted at 25% capacity or 60 people. That's actually a little lower than what's allowed under state red level. Outdoor guided services at 25% capacity up to 10 people. And then of course we have the addition of our travel affidavit for all persons traveling. We have added residents who are gone for 10 or more days are required to complete the traveler affidavit, including the testing and quarantine requirements. We have had as of this morning, just over 9,400 affidavits that have been submitted. So those are coming in, and we are getting good partnership. I'm going to distribute a podcast that went out from the National GA Aircraft Association about our travel affidavit, trying to get word out before people come in. And I think our lodging community has been an excellent partner in pushing the information out.
So, John, can I ask a question? When it comes to the traveler affidavit now applying to persons including residents traveling that are, it says have been gone from Pickens County for more than 10 days. What about the fact that we aren't requiring people who come up here from, I guess it's because they're not spending the night from Eagle or Garfield, so they don't have to do it even if they've been out of the area for more than 10 days? Okay, I answered that question. Yeah.
For work.
Okay, and the other thing was, I think there's still some confusion about the requirement for restaurants to have names and contact information about their patrons. Some restaurants still think it's only if you require reservations. Some restaurants think it's every restaurant's required to do it. Apparently, in the orange zone definitions, it's not, I couldn't pull it up on the computer. It still says only if you take reservations. So we need that to be clarified for the restaurants.
Okay.
We just need to look into that.
The intent certainly is that we're collecting that at all sites.
Yeah. Let's make sure the information actually states that. That'd be great. Thank you, John.
You bet. Obviously, there's a lot of, this is one of the ads that was in the paper today. We've got a lot of resources out on the travel affidavit, and with the changes that the public health order is bringing, particularly around the holidays, really trying to encourage folks to be creative in how you celebrate, how you connect with people while maintaining social distancing. I will say, I think the Board of Health meeting yesterday, it went long. I think it was a challenging decision for the Board of Health members to find a position that a majority could agree on to strengthen the requirements. And that was a big change that we're hoping to not have to make right before the holidays when we have so many people coming in. I'm going to stop there and see if there are additional questions before moving on.
So, John, this is really just, the new public health order is tightening our orange plus status. Is that correct? It's not going into the red, but it's making it more strict because our numbers are going up and we're still trying to turn it around the other way. Is that correct?
That's correct, Steve. And so we've creatively named it Orange Plus Plus, I think. But it is really going mostly to those red level restrictions with a few exceptions, like the in-person dining and such at the restaurants. That's a little bit more like the 5-star restrictions for those counties that are in red. And there I think was a desire on the part of the Board of Health to maintain some decision-making authority going forward, because once you go into the state's red, then you're in there until the state says you're out. The state has not moved us to the red. I will say that CDPHE did respond to the request that the Board of Health had asked to make, looking at the curfew and expressed concerns about our incidence rates increasing, and recommended that we look to tighten rather than loosen. But Steve, you're right. We are officially not in red, but we have adopted a number of the red level restrictions.
Steve?
Okay, thank you. Greg and then
let
Patty.
Greg go.
Yeah, thanks, John and Steve. I wanted to ask a couple of questions and make a couple of comments regarding these new rules. I think we're going to see we're going to see more people than we anticipate seeing here over the holiday, because it seems busy to me already. I know that the hotels are at 50%, but I don't know what that means about Airbnb and the other rental by owner. But I think we're going to have a comfortable number of people here this winter, or what we'd expect for a normal season in a way. And I'm concerned about restaurants still. And I was one of the ones who voted to go into the red yesterday, partially because I wanted to impress upon everyone how serious this is. I didn't think it should be a unanimous vote that we stray away from red. But I'd love to see posters outside every restaurant with explicit statement of what the rules and the expectations are. Enforcement still seems to be impossible. We have people who don't think we should be doing anything to enforce, apparently. But we can certainly make sure that anybody walking into a restaurant or any business in town can see the poster, can see the plaque, the board. Maybe it's on the mall, on the kiosks, but why don't we make sure that this is in everybody's face as they walk in? Because it's so easy to go into a restaurant, sit down and forget everything, masks off. I was actually out to dinner last night, and the restaurant we were in did a great job keeping people separate, masks, the whole thing, but still, it's so easy for people to let their guard down. So I think prominently posted bills would be one thing. Another thing I wanted to mention is regarding national press. Aviation News did a story about Aspen and the affidavit that I know is being distributed to aviators across the country. Condé Nast Traveler just did a big story, very positive, including the affidavit. Travel and Leisure magazine has done the same just maybe yesterday. Big article touting our climate action plan as well as the affidavit. And it actually encouraged people to sign up for the Good Traveler program, which was great because it's so easy to forget those important things while we're focusing on COVID. I know the AP has picked it up, and I also know some other big New York publications are probably going to be coming out with stories soon that I think are going to, as near as I can tell, will articulate how comfortable the people felt knowing there was an affidavit. So I think that seeing that we have 9,400 sign-ups so far, we know there's negative news. We hear the stories that people are canceling their trip because they don't want to fill out an affidavit. Yet I'm also seeing a lot of people who feel very safe and comfortable because there is one. So we'll just have to take what comes from that. The last thing I wanted to mention is that you said earlier, it was kind of interesting, our incidence rate is approaching that of Garfield counties. Garfield County is our Siamese twin. We're joined at the hip. We're joined at the river valley. How are we doing with cooperation with Garfield, where so many of the workforce live and so many of the suppliers come? You know, if they're not playing with us, I don't know. I think maybe we should make an effort, and I don't quite know what that means, but I wanted to open it for discussion. That if we don't have Garfield County on board, I think we need to talk about it. Thanks.
Wish I had an easier question, Greg. The cooperation at the staff levels remained strong with Garfield and Eagle counties. I would say the policy approach of the counties, certainly Eagle and Pitkin, I think have a much more similar approach. From the policy side, Garfield County has not been adopting the stricter public health orders consistent with the level of the dial that they're in. And so, whereas we've typically gone a little stricter, we've always gone stricter than what the state has required, really, since March. That policy approach has been, or balance has been different in Garfield County. Eagle and Pitkin counties have been probably more aligned on the policy side.
Right. If I could just add to that, I think that, you know, I hope that Garfield County realizes that their economy, certainly in the winter when the gas and oil economy is tanking, their economy is really tied to ours. The paychecks that come from here that are cashed and spent in their community probably make a huge difference to their economy. And if ours has to shut down or retract and go into a recession because of this, it's going to directly affect them. And I'm sure they're aware of that. At least I hope they are. Thanks.
And I think they are experiencing, you know, obviously they went into their increase earlier, but if you look at the numbers, you know, 28% of our total cases right now have occurred in the last 2 weeks. And so that's really concerning in terms of community spread, and Garfield is very much in a similar profile there.
Okay, Patty, I'd like to follow up on this Garfield discussion first. Was your question or comment about that or something else?
No, I can wait till others comment. I'm fine.
Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
So let's go to Kelly and then George.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge, you know, this board had asked Steve and I to reach out to John Martin to facilitate that conversation, and we haven't done that. And I think it's clearer for me now, but over the last few weeks, I was struggling with pursuing that because I wasn't clear on our Board of Health positions. You know, it was with conversations about trying to open restaurants back up and how we would pursue the 5-star program. You know, it left me struggling to go to Garfield County with a strong message while we were also trying to have conversations about staying open against the data. You know, so I wasn't sure what argument to pitch to them, because on one hand, you know, they're trying to be open and relax rules, and that was part of the dynamic of our conversation as well. So I think with yesterday's conversation, you know, the position is a bit clearer. You know, and I do, you know, I would acknowledge Greg's point for sure. I mean, we have 12,000 jobs and sort of historically import about 60% of those. So it is a portion of Garfield County's population for sure. And any closures up here put stress on their human services down there, without a doubt. So I'm feeling like we have a clearer path for that conversation, but I didn't feel comfortable pursuing it because I felt like we were kind of on shifting ground between when we last talked about this and now.
George?
Well, I'll add maybe a little black humor, levity, if I can. There was this story about a businessman who was visiting Israel for the first time. He was staying at the King David Hotel, and every morning he would look out the window and see this older gentleman go over to the Wailing Wall and kneel down and pray. And he watched this for about 3-4 days. And then finally he decided to go over and ask this gentleman, I've seen you over here at the Wailing Wall for the last 3-4 days praying. What are you praying for? And the gentleman says, well, I'm praying for peace and goodwill and health for everybody. And the gentleman says, well, are you having any success? And the old man says, no, it's like talking to a stone wall. And, you know, when I think about Garfield County, when I think about some of their comments that they are asking the CDPHE to consider that gyms are essential businesses, I think you're talking to a stone wall. However, I think where we know where most of the activities are within the municipalities. So when you look at Carbondale, Glenwood, Silt, Rifle, Newcastle, I think we may have more success if we're able to convince those city councils to put in stricter restrictions, because Garfield County commissioners basically, you know, it's unincorporated Pickens County, unincorporated Garfield County. So you may think about a different strategy in terms of working with the municipalities versus the current slate of county commissioners there.
Yeah, and I have seen some press revolving around that several municipalities in Garfield County have definite differences in opinion than the Garfield County commissioners. So I think already we probably would have a receptive audience talking with them. Patty?
Yeah, George, it's not that I don't agree with what you just said. It's just that I still think it would be appropriate for us to at least reach out to the Garfield County commissioners. And I say that in light of what happened with the closure of Independence Pass. Because our biggest concern was that they didn't reach out to us. So we would then be following that behavior, and a behavior that I didn't agree with. So I think we should at least reach out. And John, I have a question for you. If you municipalities, what's the process for them to enact stricter guidelines outside of the County Board of Health?
So the municipalities do have a number of authorities that they could exercise in that regard. They wouldn't necessarily be under Title 25 of state statutes, so the public health statute, but would be exercised more under the municipality's police powers. And generally, home rule municipalities, unless they are specifically prohibited from doing so by the state, have some flexibility in designing those types of requirements.
Okay. And another thing that is, I think, is rather concerning. It's my understanding, I haven't actually seen one of these forms, that Garfield County has provided, if restaurants want them, to post at their doors, that they are continuing to operate in violation of the red zone public health orders, with the blessing of the Garfield County Commissioners. I think that is a horrible precedent to set, and I really hope that restaurants follow the rules that are set by the red zone, and don't. It's a blatant violation, and again, you know, the enforcement issue is huge, like Greg said, and that is something that we've been trying to deal with from the get-go, and we really need to. I think that's going to be part of the continuing discussion with the Board of Health. So I'm hoping that it's not just a matter of going in and you know, over and over again to these restaurants or businesses or whoever that continues to be acting in noncompliance. We just haven't really done anything that really makes a difference, and so people aren't taking us seriously. And I think that's a huge problem for us. And I think it's going to happen over the holiday when people are going to be having private gatherings of a couple of hundred people, we've heard, and operating without a business safety plan, which they even with a business safety plan, they're technically not going to be able to have those gatherings. And, you know, what are we going to do? Ann Mullins did bring up a good point yesterday about talking to the party suppliers like Premier and the people who do the party tents that she has seen driving around town. And I also talked with the city consumer protection office staff person with Emmy yesterday about adding into that. We need to contact the valet parking services who service those big events and let them know that if they are operating as part of those events, they are in noncompliance with the public health order, and there can be repercussions for that. So, I mean, this has not been easy, and the decision yesterday was a tough decision, and my biggest point was, I don't have a problem with adapting and accepting and bringing in some of the stricter points in the red zone, but we would, if we adopted the red zone, lose our total control, and I think this county doesn't want to do that because in some cases, the decisions that are being made by the state do not fit in the needs of our community. And I think that we need to retain that ability to have some local control until such time as if they choose to take that ability away from us.
Greg?
Thank you. Yeah, Patty, thank you for bringing that up. And thank you for really bringing it back around to the issue of local control. It certainly affected my stance, and I think it was great that you brought it up. My big fear is that, you know, we're still creating loopholes for which the COVID virus will easily slide through. And so was my biggest concern. It's like, you know, we might have to get more serious, and I guess by January 4th we'll know. Hopefully that won't be too late for our hospitals and our medical crew, who I think were pretty much begging us yesterday to clamp down. Regarding the enforcement, when I brought up compliance officers, I didn't get much support on that, and you know, Ann just completely shut the conversation down right off the bat. So I think if we're going to talk about doing compliance officers or anything like that, I think it might have to come from this board, because I'm not seeing it from the city or the Board of Health, although I think we might have more support if we actually had the conversation at that level. The conversation just died immediately, and so we didn't even have a chance to articulate it, and as frustrating as that was, we had too much business at hand to continue, and so I let it drop. But it seems to me that if we're talking compliance officers, it might just be this board that has to do it if we're able.
Well, based on the discussion that we had about coronavirus relief funds, we are out working to get temps added in during the holiday season to double that consumer protection staff for the county. for the next at least several months. And so we are beefing up our capacity to do those checks, Greg. Enforcement is always a challenge because the gradient is, you're either really shutting down or going to court. There's not a whole lot in between, and that's been our challenge. I think Giordano is trying to articulate that by the time enforcement is effective, short of an immediate shutdown of a business, the time for infection has long passed. And so that's just, I'm hoping that's a learning that we bring to amending Title 25 for the next time there's a public health crisis in the state. But we are working on building that capacity now, recognizing that. I think we heard it from our, not just the public, but also our business community wants equity. They want enforcement. So,
if I could, John, to follow up on that, I think they do also. I've had people in the business community, the least likely restaurateurs and others, have been telling me privately they don't want to create a public furor, but privately I've been hearing that they would like to see more equitable enforcement, and they don't see how this can work without it. And anecdotally, I did hear that there were, we had one fairly egregious restaurant bar violation last year, and he got slapped on the wrist. But I heard he had a party on his rooftop a couple nights ago at the restaurant. So it continues, and it's a tough one, but I think we're going to have some. It's almost like we're going to need an example like we had with the distancing issue on Rio Grande Trail last summer. There may need to be an example before people take it seriously. Because if they just think they don't have to do anything about it because we're never going to enforce, then it's pretty much a useless rule.
Yeah, and when we do have evidence, we are enforcing. And I will say, I think the municipalities have been good partners in collecting video evidence and such in the past, and hopefully that will continue. I think we've heard some of the rumors too, obviously, and we're trying to track down the evidence that would allow us to successfully pursue an enforcement action.
Steve?
Patty?
Yeah, and this only furthers my position that going to the red zone and shutting everything down, we're gonna be hurting the people who have been working really hard to be in compliance. And chances are that the people who haven't really given much thought to being in compliance are gonna continue to do things that are out of compliance. And so what is the benefit there? And so I think bringing in extra people, especially this next 2 weeks, getting out there on the streets, letting these businesses know that we are watching them. And there's nothing that says that if a consumer protection person walks into a restaurant and they're not in compliance, I would think that they could just say, you are closed for the night, you're done, everybody out. Because we have to be able to do something like that to make the point, like Greg just said. We have to show that we're taking this seriously. Because if we go to red and we have no enforcement, what are we really doing? Perhaps we're hurting the people that have been in compliance and not giving them any credit for that. But are we really protecting public health? Without enforcement, we really are not protecting public health.
George?
Yeah, I listened to that conversation briefly yesterday in Ann's comments, and I think Ann's comments were really more concerned about ensuring that you had people that were really trained ahead of time, right, instead of just grabbing people off the street, and I think you guys discussed that. But, to have a compliance officer go up to a business and say, you're closed, get everybody out, I don't know how you can do that without having someone from actually a law enforcement there to support that person, because I think you're putting a person that that person in a very precarious situation and maybe a harmful situation. And so you'd have to have, I think the way you would do that is to have that compliance officer then contact someone from the police department or the sheriff's officer to come in for support versus trying to deal with that situation on their own. John, what do you think about that?
Well, and as a practical matter, I think when we've seen those types of egregious violations, they've usually been fairly late. And evidence is typically collected by law enforcement and then brought to public health to evaluate the violation, and then a closure, happens, or a notice of violation, or, depending on how egregious, obviously it is. We have set a process where, when it's not egregious, we go through warning, notice of violation, and then a shutdown order through the public health director. And so we've been trying to stick to that, except in the most egregious of circumstances. I don't know if John Ely is still on, but I think the shutdowns can actually only be affected through an order through the public health director, and we've typically had to really review the evidence and such before taking that kind of action.
Yeah, John, and it's those delays that only further the transmission of infection. And that's the hard part.
That's the hard part. I agree. Patty, it's really what we need is compliance. And when we do have those types of egregious and we can get the evidence of it, we will shut a business down until there is a plan for compliance. And that is costly for a business.
Well, John, could we
Especially
at least ask, say, a restaurant who was in non-compliance and was noticed at the time to come into compliance for the rest of the evening? You're out of compliance now, you need to separate your tables, you need to limit your guests, and we're asking you to do that now, rather than totally shut them down. That's another option we may want to look into. So at least some action is taken as soon as possible.
Yeah, those are conversations that do happen, but with 3 compliance officers, we're not out 24/7.
Yeah, well, we've talked about that and the need to increase that, especially over the next 2 weeks, because we could go to purple, black, and blue, and without having enforcement, any of the stricter regulations that we are putting out there really aren't going to make a difference unless people comply, and there's an enforcement aspect to that.
Okay, Kelly?
Thanks. Patty, I just really need to challenge that because other counties are having the same enforcement concerns and challenges that we are. And John put up the data and showed that what happens in the red brings down the incidence rate. And even in Grand County, who was not in the red but closed restaurants, brought down their incidence rate. So it's just not accurate, and I just have to challenge you to say that even without compliance, even if you go into the red, nothing will be beneficial. It's not true, and I have to challenge you on that before that gains too much steam, okay? And to separate that doesn't mean we don't continue to have a compliance, concern and challenges with compliance and enforcement. And so I wonder, John, is it possible, can we discuss redeploying open space and trail rangers who have some training in this regard, in these compliance and enforcement efforts to help us with this? I just, my assumption is that their work demand is less right now in the winter than it is in the summer, and I wonder if we could request their availability to help there.
We can certainly have that discussion. A lot of that capacity is also seasonal, not full-time, and so there is still a lot of winter enforcement issues that go on. So we can definitely have that conversation. We certainly have been having those conversations in the organization, and I think what's happened that we didn't expect is that activity levels, particularly in outdoor settings, have been pretty high this year. And I think that continues. We typically shrink that seasonal staff, and there's still a lot of work that's happening on open space and trails properties. But we can certainly continue to look into that and make those asks.
I'm a little unclear as to some of the follow-up on yesterday's conversation with regards to the, opportunities and authorities related to enforcing the, the catering and the party planner businesses and, the limo companies and all that, who would be facilitating these gatherings in violation of the public health order. Because to me, if you enforce on a homeowner who threw a party, that's sort of that's like a moment in time that's passed. But if you enforce on the businesses that perpetuated that, that's like future lost opportunity for them that could cause them to change their behavior. So, I'm unclear of where that point of the conversation went, and I'm unclear on the conversation around a countywide curfew and the concerns related to, our authorities connected there to that as well.
Yeah, so on the first one, I think it's just connecting all the dots sufficiently to follow that enforcement action. I think what staff took away is that we should be looking at all of those opportunities where a business is knowingly providing support for those gatherings, whether it be the tents or the meals or those sorts of things, as a violation of the public health order. And so that's something that we're going to be looking at as we identify these private gatherings. Frankly, are really hard to catch. They're just hard to catch because they're at people's houses and such. On the curfew, it's probably a little bit different issue that, I didn't mean to say that we couldn't do a curfew, but what we need to establish is the direct evidence that a overall curfew, I think there's direct evidence about people from multiple households being in enclosed spaces and how that relates to infection risk. Obviously, a curfew, a total curfew, where everyone needs to be back home off the streets, not traveling. That's what I was hearing yesterday at 10 o'clock. We would need to be able to provide the evidence, Kelly, that that's where the risk is, to have that level of restriction on activity. And I wanted to be sure staff had the room to put evidence together, because that is not something, the business restriction we're fairly clear on. The overall curfew, that we did not have evidence on, and it may not be enforceable. And that's based on discussions we've had with the attorney's office and such on how we justify restrictions under the public health orders, that they have to be directly related back to preventing infection. And
yeah, just a follow-up question on that is, haven't other counties done that, or am I just misunderstood?
My understanding is Denver has done that. I'm not sure if any other counties have. And it might be different in an urban setting, and that's where we need to establish the evidence.
Steve, I'd like to have the opportunity to respond to what Kelly said about my comments about the red zone. It is not that I am disagreeing or ignoring the statistics coming out of other counties, but without knowing what kind of compliancy issues and enforcement issues those other counties have, are their situations the same as ours with the amount of tourists that come in with the big homes and have parties, et cetera, et cetera? I think there might be a definite difference there. So I see their numbers have come down, and I think that's great. And the red zone has worked in those areas. But I don't have enough information to be able to say that it would definitely do the same thing in our community if we still have issues with compliance and enforcement.
I can say that not many counties stood up a separate consumer protections function to do that education and enforcement role. Some counties did, and so we do know through discussion with our peers that a number of counties really don't have the capacity to enforce more nuanced rules. That's really what we're talking about here is we're trying to thread a needle and we need people to comply, and that is so much more difficult to kind of enforce and educate versus a total shutdown or more of a shutdown where a violation is a little bit more black and white. You don't need the same enforcement capacity to recognize or enforce a violation. And so I do think that part of our, I think it's the right balance to try and strike, but the more nuanced we are, and the more we try and thread the needle and balance activities with protecting public health, it drives up that compliance challenge. And I think that's part of what we're struggling with. I always think I've got way too much time for these, and we're gonna run out of time, I'm afraid. Another super busy slide. Are we okay moving on?
John, I have one real quick question.
Yeah, I believe so.
Mark, he kept referring to January 4th. That would be a date that's a Monday. Is she calling a special meeting, or are we gonna have a meeting on Thursday? I was a little confused with that.
You know, ever since we said we were gonna have meetings once a month, it seems like we have them once a week.
Or twice a week.
As promised, we would call them as needed. So yeah, I think the intent that I heard was to call a meeting on the 4th, Patty.
Will we have any information? Because that's like 2 days after the holiday. When the weekend,
Yeah,
so let's just kind of consider that.
Yeah, I think we were originally scheduled for the 14th, and I think the 4th kept coming up to do a check-in post-holidays. So we'll confirm that, but yeah, I think that's the intent.
Yeah, well, with anything, we've kind of asked members of the Board of Health to keep open the Thursdays so that people could have their schedules arranged around it. So maybe we should think about having the meeting on the Thursday when we might not only have more data, but more people might be able to attend. That's just a thought. Thank you.
So some good news. Federal aid package was approved, signed. We are still learning how that's going to roll out, but we do know it includes enhanced unemployment insurance benefits, and that will allow enhanced unemployment benefits to continue in Colorado with a $300 per week unemployment enhancement for those who are out of work. The bill also includes $600 in direct payment checks per an adult and child, which will hopefully help families who are struggling right now. $69 billion was included in the bill for vaccines, testing and tracing, community health and healthcare provider support. We do not have a clear view how that will be distributed yet, though we suspect it will come down through the states first. Small business support, another round of paycheck protection loans, and these are loans that get converted to grants upon meeting certain criteria for keeping folks employed. There's also support for those venues that really are having a challenge operating during the social distancing guidelines. new round of rental assistance, and an extension of the eviction moratorium through January 31st. Also additional funding for SNAP, and child nutrition benefits. And it looks like there's additional funding, that will go to child care assistance and for school districts and colleges. And then there's also funding included for broadband and also, actually road and highway projects. We are going to be meeting today. We had talked earlier about the need for navigators for individuals and small business. We are having a conversation with Aspen Community Foundation later on today to see if there's an opportunity to do an Aspen to Parachute program, what that would entail and who might run it. But obviously having these types of federal dollars for rental assistance, unemployment, small business support, I think points to that being a really effective use of dollars to try and leverage what's going to be coming down through the feds and state. So we are going to be tracking this, more to come. You probably recognize I grabbed these bullet points from CCI, for an email that already went out to all of you. So we are going to be working to track these and understand how they're going to be coming down through our, primarily our human services and health departments, and then small business support programs. And then we are requesting right now to close the admin building, sheriff and admin building, to the public from Thursday, December 24th until January 4th. And there's a few reasons for this. One, with the incidence rates, we think going back to contactless service is the right model for our employees. Frankly, we are starting to see an increase amongst our employees that are driving quarantine and isolation, specifically those that support different functions within our facilities. And so we want to be sure we're able, as we have our employee resources being narrowed by those quarantine and isolation orders, that we're able to focus resources on essential facilities, for example, like the jail, both to get them supplied, cleaned, all of those other things. The reason that we're asking to wait till Thursday is right now really the only office in the admin building that is open to the public is the clerk's office by appointment. It allows the clerk's office to keep the appointments through this week and give time to call folks and reschedule or move services online. We are getting concerned about, frankly, we need a little break to let our staff capacity come back up, and it also allows us to honor the 10% density that is outlined in red for office spaces. So I'd like to get some feedback from the board on that. We'd like to begin to advertise this and affect it on Thursday, after Thursday.
Craig?
I would certainly approve this suggestion from staff. I don't have a hesitation to approve this.
George? Oh, you just given a thumbs up? I would agree with it also. You know, I think it worked pretty well earlier with we were able to provide a pretty high level of service actually to the public, doing things almost entirely remotely, and I think we need to try to keep people healthy right now. this is like a marathon we're in, where eventually we're gonna all start being able to get vaccinations, but we have to hold out till then and be as prudent as possible, and this is being prudent right now.
Steve?
Patty?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with this, John. And I know that the staff in the clerk's office is well aware that this is a busy time, end of the year, when people all of a sudden realize they have to get documents processed. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to accommodate that, because that's just how life is here. And I think that can be done without direct contact, if we just kind of plan for that. So, I'm sure Janice is geared into that, but just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, we've definitely had those conversations with the clerk's office, and they're essential functions, particularly in recording and some of those transactions that you know, we are able to accommodate in a touchless fashion. So just some other pieces. We are, per Board of Health direction, we are still looking at standing up and applying for the state's 5-star program. Currently, we wouldn't qualify for our variance until our incidence rate numbers begin to decrease. We're also in planning for connecting individuals and small businesses with federal and state aid. There's probably going to be a 2-step kind of process there. We see the need for that navigation program, but I think we're also going to need to have a step before that stood up for, you know, whether it's in our Human Services Department or business liaison to be pushing information out as these programs become available. We've already talked about January 4th was mentioned for a Board of Health meeting. Patty, we'll bring up the other concerns about maybe moving that to Thursday. And then just the good news, vaccines do continue to be distributed. We've got another couple of hundred actually that are going to be distributed in the community, continuing to work through AVH staff, and then we've got a prioritization of first responders who will be immunized by community health services. We've gotten our first shipment of Moderna vaccine, so we're expecting these to continue to ramp up. I think, as we've said in the past, it's going to take a little bit of time for these to scale and be generally available to the public, but they are getting distributed now. And it is a light at the end of the tunnel. So we're looking forward to the vaccines rolling out. We've certainly learned a lot in terms of logistics and such over the last year, and we're going to be getting, as these become available for the public, we'll have location finders and such up on our website early, not unlike what we have for testing now. And then with that, this will probably be the last update of the year, because unless something goes really wrong, this should be our last meeting of the year. You know, so I just want to see if well, first I wanted to thank the board. This has no doubt been an unusual year filled with unprecedented challenges, really generational level challenges. The information has been difficult to all get our heads and our hearts around, quite frankly, in a timely manner. And just want to thank the board for your nimbleness and thoughtfulness and leadership representing the community during all of this. And with that, any questions or further discussion?
Greg?
Yeah, thanks, John, and also just while you're on the topic, I just want to thank our staff. you and your team have done an amazing job navigating a treacherous last 9 months. You know, I'm going to start crying now when I think back to all the angst, the grief, and the anxiety and the stress that everyone has gone through. But you've brought us through it, and so I really do appreciate that. And I know it hasn't been easy. I did have a question about. There was a talk of the app that the state was putting out, and I know we all have it on our. If you have a new iPhone or one of the new phones, it's actually built in as an option. You can just enable it. But I haven't heard a word about it since. Do you happen to know if that was ever deployed or it's being used? And maybe that's it.
It is so funny that you say that, because that is an iPause with a link to that app that we just distributed.
It wasn't me. My phone's not doing it.
So Greg, yes, that is out there. We actually we try and use that iPause system judiciously, so that people pay attention to it when it startles us in meetings like this. But the two messages that we really wanted to use are limited characters to get out with this first iPause. Was one, making sure people understood the single household restrictions, and two, that we provided a link and asked people to sign up for this notification app. So there is a link on your phone, I know, because I just heard it, that just went out now. And we really do encourage all our visitors, all our residents to use this notification app.
So John, a question going through till January. Could you do a weekly rehash on the COVID-19 just to let us know if there's kind of what the numbers are, what the trends are? Obviously, you don't have to go into as much detail as we do in these meetings. And then if we absolutely needed to, I think we could call a special work session just to talk about the COVID if we had to, but hopefully just doing an email update would be sufficient to keep us all apprised of what's happening and between now and January.
Yeah, we'll definitely, yeah.
Hey, Steve.
George first.
Oh.
Yeah, John, I mean, it is possible, not to be pessimistic, but that the state could, depending on our dial with our other indicators, they could put Pickens County in the red zone whenever another indicator pushes that lever, right?
That's correct, George, and the state has been very consistent with us in that messaging, and we've tried to be consistent with the community in the messaging that with our incidence rate now has been in the red for some time. If we have another indicator go into the red, either hospitalizations or positivity, then we will be moved to the red, and we will be required to implement all of those red level restrictions.
Yeah, I think that's important for the public to understand, though, even though our public health are being as nimble as we can, staying in an orange plus, we could be pushed into a red tomorrow, perhaps, if these indicators continue to move the way they are moving it. And knowing that town is going to get busier every day as we move forward. And the stats last week were that something like 1 out of every 40 Coloradans are testing positive. And when you think about, I haven't been in town at all, but I've been on the trails and been skinning up the mountains. And when you think about the number of people that one sees on the mountains, at the base of the mountains, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of people. And so if we use that number 1 out of 40, I think we can certainly extrapolate that people coming from all around the country, that incidence rate could be substantially higher. So I think it's really incumbent about the business community and to Patty's points earlier about the restaurants and Greg's points about posting, that we can only do so much. And if the community, the business community is not vigilant in terms of following every rule that is in place, it's going to be out of our control and out of their control. The state is going to mandate what will happen in Pickens County.
Steve, can I respond to that for George? George, that point was clearly discussed at yesterday's Board of Health meeting, that it may come to the point where it is out of our control, and everyone acknowledged and pretty much accepted that if that comes to be, then we have to go with the flow. We're not going to do the Garfield County, give everybody our blessing to violate the red zone requirements. So that was discussed. What the question I have though, John, does that affect the ski company's operating permit? Because the ski company's permit is a separate issue.
So for their restaurants and retail and such, they would have to follow those guidelines. Ski areas have been allowed to continue operating in counties that are in the red.
That's what I
under
thought.
their
Just so that everyone is clear on that. That's one of the things. So it's very confusing. It's very complex. If anything with this COVID pandemic was simple, we sure missed it because we haven't found anything that's simple about it yet.
there is that.
Yeah, that's one of the things I guess we figured out, that it's just not simple.
Greg, what are you showing with your iPhone there? The red COVID red.
Oh, that was the announcement. That was the Pitkin alert, and the alert just, the headline is that we're red level restrictions. If you go in and click on the link, it will talk about the exceptions we made where we are not pushing the restaurants all the way in to those restrictions as the conversation we've had yesterday and today articulated. But the immediate headline is that we're going into red. But I had to open it up to see that just exactly what they're putting out. It makes sense. It's good. I'm hoping it makes people pause and think about being safer. I know we're changing our holiday plans and with family, and it's going to be difficult. It's not going to be an easy thing, but we have to do this. So that's the alert that just popped up. You'll probably all be getting it shortly.
Yeah, we got it, but I think it's a little misleading. It should have said that we are adopting some of the stricter requirements as presented in the red zone. But I mean, people think that we have chosen to go into the red zone voluntarily, and that's really not what we did yesterday. We chose to bring in some of the red zone restrictions, but keep us at the orange plus until such time as we had no choice but to go red.
Yeah, if you click on the link, it basically says that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. But when the headline comes out like that, we're going to probably be receiving a lot of calls from people. But that's part of it.
That's all I have for you.
Okay, thank you, John. Does anybody else have any other open discussion items? Between now and January 5th, Kelly.
I'll just make two quick statements. One, I was really sad to hear of the passing of Catherine Cook.
Yes.
Catherine Cook is just so lovely. Such a dynamic, just caring, funny, open, welcoming, warm person. And gosh, it really, really brought tears to my eyes to hear that she had passed. So just want to extend, that thought about her and, condolences to her large group of friends in the community and her family as well.
Wow, that's the first I've heard that. Wow. I can see that now.
I was in the paper this morning.
Yeah, she was great.
yeah, she was wonderful. And I just want to note, this really has been a tough year, and even though some of our policy conversations are complicated and complex, I find that when things feel really complicated, I try to focus on what's simple. This Christmas for me has really been simplified. People who know me know that I go crazy and go all out and, have loads of parties and love to connect with everybody and give gifts to everybody I know. And so it's just been simplifying that, and it's simple to stay home. It's simple to make our activities outside in the outdoors where we live in this beautiful place. It's simple to care for each other. It's simple to buy gift certificates to local restaurants to help them get through this period and give those as gifts to friends. It's simple to drop off cans of food for the food drive. So I just keep that in mind when things feel really overwhelming and hard and complicated, that we can find simpler paths to help us through. And I'm thinking of all of you, and I'm thinking of our broader community. I wish you all safe, happy holidays.
Steve, I just want to acknowledge.
Thank you, Kelly, and what you just described, Kelly, was how our lives really were in the 1960s here when we moved here, where most of the people we knew lived on farms and ranches and just stayed at home and had simpler lives then and didn't drive around very much. I remember going from our house to Glenwood Springs and seeing about 6 cars on the road the entire way. And that's the way it used to be in this valley. And we kind of need to emulate that now to help fight this virus. So the more we can do, just stay at home and not go places and not be with other people for a little while, it's really going to help to flatten the curve again. That's what we need to go back to, flattening the curve. Patty?
Yeah, I think I need to say that, we have such a diverse population here in Pickens County. There's, certain percentage of people that, find it easier to comply with all these changes and restrictions because of their lifestyles or just their ability to comply with these things. And then there's another percentage of our population that this is very difficult for them because of their jobs, because of their economic status, because of their lifestyle, their stages of their children, how they live, where they live within the community, and their proximity to extended families. And they may not live in their household but are here in the valley. So it's difficult for everybody in a different way, and some people find it easy to comply and don't understand why everybody can't comply. But we have to acknowledge our diverse population and the difference in needs, lifestyles, and just what some people have and some people don't. So I think that's important for us to always remember. When we make these decisions, we need to realize that it's going to be really hard for a certain sector of our population, and we need to do whatever we can to help support them, to support the whole community, actually.
Okay, well, I think we are done for the day. Wish everybody a happy holidays. Everybody stay healthy. And
Likewise. Cheers. It starts now. Doesn't it start now?
It's almost noon, Greg.
So Patty, if you
4 o'clock somewhere.
Find out if you can sign the mill levy papers.
Yeah, I'll check in on that right now and let you know.
Text me or email me.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay.
I authorize Patty to sign for Steve.
So we need a motion to adjourn our special meeting.
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved by Greg, seconded by Patty. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, guys.
Aye.
Have a good holiday.
Happy holidays.
See y'all.
Thanks.
See y'all next year.
Everybody. 2020 will be gone. Yay.